Welcome back to EPT 11 in Barcelona. I found Scott Seiver, who's playing the super high roller, to talk about a hand that's been talked about a lot in the last couple of days, which was at the final table of the big 1-for-1 drop. Scott made the money in that tournament and played a huge hand against Tobias Reinkemeier that could have potentially busted him if that didn't go the way it did. Scott, that hand with the king 10 against aces, does that rank high on your list of craziest hands ever?
It's one of the wilder hands I've played. A lot of it is because of, honestly, just the size of the buy-in, the situation, the amount of television coverage, but it's a pretty crazy hand, I have to say.
Looking back on it, of course, on ESPN, you get to see a different side of the hand. How was it for you in that moment? How much pressure were you really under?
I was under a ton of pressure, and looking back at it, I feel really proud of myself for how I handled it, how I felt that I seemed relaxed and was able to talk and just enjoy the moment.
The situation itself, you raised with king 10 before the flop. Tobias Reinkemeier decides to defend the big blind with aces. That spot, the situation, you playing against Tobias in that situation, was that something you've been really accustomed to playing with him over the years, and how were you approaching the flop in that spot?
Toby and I have just played countless hands together, so I'm not trying to do anything crazy or different that I would against other people because I feel he knows my game really well, and I was just trying to play my cards.
Then Tobias check calls your continuation bet on the flop, and on the turn you get a straight draw, but it's also the third club out there. What went into your thought process moving all in then on the turn against his range?
Mostly what went through my head is that I had a somewhat nice draw, and I was a little scared because the flush could be there, so my hand wasn't really that great anymore. But I thought it seemed like a really scary card, and in such a big tournament with so much money on the line, maybe I could put a little pressure on him.
Did you at any point think, when he basically said that he had aces, did you think that he was ever going to fold that?
He was acting the whole time, actually, that he was probably going to fold, but people changed their mind countless times over the course of a tank and a hand, so I wouldn't have been surprised either way.
When Negreanu called the clock after about 10 minutes, do you think that influenced his decision, and were you happy or disappointed with that move?
I don't really think it influenced the decision, maybe slightly. I was somewhat happy for it, but honestly mostly because you can really only be under someone's glare for so long. I think it's important to have the clock called in these situations in general, just to protect the player at risk in general.
And then when he ends up folding, you said, no way he has pocket aces. When he showed, what you were so surprised and you were so in shock, do you think he made a big mistake?
I honestly don't know. It's impossible to say looking from anyone else's perspective what you should or shouldn't do. It's so easy to say after the fact or looking with the cards of what you should do, but it's really impossible to know.
All right, well, that's the story on one of the biggest hands of the year, in my opinion. Stay tuned on Pokers.com for more coverage of EPT Barcelona.